Hargrave, and I'm the author of many stories for children and for grown-ups, and today I thought it would be really nice to go way back, almost 6 years ago, to the very first story that I wrote, and that is The Girl of Ink and Stars. And I know that these are really strange times, but to be honest, this is the best time to be surrounded by books, so I would really encourage you to escape into as many other worlds as you can. That's exactly what I'm doing. These are some of the books that I'm hoping to read during this time. And another thing you can be doing is coming up with your own stories. And I wanted to share with you really quickly how I started this story, the story that became The Girl of Ink and Stars. And I started it with an island. And this is the drawing that I made when I decided that I wanted to make this story. This is the piece of paper that I picked up. On the other side there's an essay I was working on for school and it's just got all these details that I thought I might want to include in my adventure story. And that island turned into something that's as close to real to me as anything. It became the island of Joya, which is where my story takes place. And another small thing that I want to share with you before I begin my reading is this very special rock. So this is volcanic rock. This is actually lava that was spurted into the air thousands of years ago. And I picked up this piece of rock in Hawaii, but this is what I imagine Joya was made of, this kind of glinting, extraordinary, very light piece of rock. So if you've read The Girl of Ink and Stars, or you're going to continue reading The Girl of Ink and Stars, this is a very important piece of the puzzle. But now I'm just going to read to you the first chapter. I've got my favourite pillow on my lap, Frida Kahlo, and I hope that you tuck yourself in, get comfy, because the only thing better than reading in these times is being read to. Chapter 1. They say the day the governor arrived, the ravens did too. All the smaller birds flew backwards into the sea, and that is why there are no songbirds on Joya, only huge, ragged ravens. I'd watch them perch on the rooftops like omens, and try to squint them into the chaffinches and goldcrests Dar drew from memory. If I imagined hard enough, I could almost hear them singing. Why did the songbirds leave Dar? I'd ask. Because they could, Isabella. And the wolves, the deer? Dar's face would darken. Seems the sea was better than what they were running from. Dar would tell me another story then, about the girl warrior Arinta, or about Joya's mythical past as a floating island, and refused to say more about the wolves and the backwoods birds. But I kept asking, until the day came when I found my own answers. The morning it began was like any other. I woke in my narrow bed, sunrise just starting to brighten the mud walls of my room. Dar must have been up for hours, as it took a long time for the fire to heat the heavy clay pot, and the smell of burnt porridge hung on the air. I could hear Miss La, our hen, scratching about outside my room, seeking out crumbs. She was 13 years old, same as me, but even though it's young for a person, it is very, very old for a chicken. Her feathers were grey, her mood was black, and even our cat Pep was scared of her. My tummy rumbled as I stretched my arms. Pep was sprawled across my legs and he yowled loudly as I sat up. You awake, Isabella? Dar called from the kitchen. Morning, Dar. Porridge is ready, a little over-ready, in fact. Coming. I eased my legs out and smoothed the cat's rough fur where it had ruffled in the night. Sorry, Pep. He purred and closed his green eyes. I washed my face in the basin by the window and stuck a tongue out at the reflection in the polished meadow above Garbo's bed, straightening his sheets, dustier every day, but still made. The voice line arched next to his pillow, a long, thin hollow Dar had etched for us up the walls and over the ceiling. When we pressed our lips to it and whispered, it carried our voices so we could talk even when we were at each end of the room in our separate beds. 3 years now. 3 years since I sat there, my twin's hand fire in mine as he faded in the night, fast as a blown-out match. But still I could conjure him, easy as breathing. It would not do to start the day sad. Shaking the thoughts out of my head, I pulled on my school dress. It was as big as it had been 6 weeks before. My best friend Lupe would laugh. "Still the shortest in the class," she'd say. I quickly braided my unbrushed hair and hoped Dar wouldn't notice I hadn't untangled it all summer. Pep was rolling on the bed, but I wasn't allowed to stroke him with my uniform on. My teacher, Signora Filez, was always picking ginger hairs off my dress with irritated fingers. I pulled aside the curtain that served as my bedroom door and carefully stepped over Miss La, who squawked as I scattled her small pile of crumbs. She narrowed her misty eyes and pecked at my ankles, chasing me further into the main room where we talked, ate, and planned adventures. A big bowl of blackened porridge sat on our large pine plank table, marooned amongst a sea of maps. More of Dar's maps were stuck to the walls and they rustled as they passed, like a talking breeze. I traced the paper with my finger as I did every morning, watching how the silver pigment of Afrique's rivers met those of Egypt, how Egypt clung to the curve of Europa Bay like one hand grasping another across the sea. On the opposite wall hung the sketchy coast of America and its dragging ocean currents, labelled with strange, wondrous names: the Frozen Circle, the Vanishing Triangle, the Cerulean Sea. The paper was dyed a beautiful deep blue, and the currents were picked out in thread against it. Dar had used a needle thin as a hair for these. Gold for cerulean, black for the triangle, white for the frozen circle. But past the eastern coast, everything stopped. Only one word broke the blankness: incognito, unknown. I could almost feel Dar's disappointment in the long dried ink of the word. Unfavourable tides on his last trip meant an early return to Joya, and Dar never again made it across that wild expanse before the governor arrived on our island. Governor Adori closed the ports and made the forest that stretched coast to coast between our village of Gramera and the rest of the island into a border, banishing anyone who resisted his rule to the other side. Gramera was cut off from the rest of Joya, and the forest was strung with thick thorns and enormous bells to warn the governor's guards if anyone came through. I had never heard the bells ring. Dar dreamt of filling in the gaps on his Amrika maps, whereas what I wanted, more than anything else, was to cross the forest border and chart the forgotten territories which lay beyond, though I had never told him so. There was only one map that showed the whole of our island, and it hung in Dar's study. I called it Marv's map, because it had been passed down through her family for generations, maybe ever since Arinta's time, 1,000 years ago. It had always felt like a sign that Ma and Dar were meant for each other, that he was a cartographer and her only heirloom was a map. Each of us carries the map of our lives on our skin, in the way we walk, even in the way we grow, Dar would often say. See here, how my blood runs not blue at my wrist, but black. Your mother always said it was ink. I am a cartographer through to my heart. Fetch the jug, would you? Dar's voice made me jump, pulling me back into the room. I dragged a chair to the shelves, carefully taking the jug from high up and put it on a table next to the porridge. It was forest green and special, because it was the last thing Ma made. We used it only on the first day of school and on birthdays and feast days. Dar kept it out of reach and washed it with great care. I could remember Ma sometimes, dark-eyed and mostly smiling, smelling of the black clay she worked with, making pots for the villagers and delicate pieces for the governor. Or maybe I imagined her, like the songbirds. Good morning, little one. Dar limped from the kitchen. I rushed to take the milk pail and cups he was carrying. You shouldn't walk without your stick, I scolded. Dar had broken his leg as a young man, leaping from the jetty of an Egyptian port onto a moving ship, and now used a walking stick carved from a fragment of his great-great-grandfather's fishing boat. It was my favourite thing out of all the many favourite things in the room. Light as paper, it floated even in the thinnest skim of water. But most miraculously of all, it glowed in the dark. Dar said it was because of the sap, but I knew it was magic. I hurried to clear a space on the table, shifting the Himalaya mountains onto a shelf. Dar poured the milk into Ma's jug, then settled down on the bench next to me and grinned. Pick a pocket. I rolled my eyes. Left. He wiggled his eyebrows like two black caterpillars. Right answer. He pulled a small jar from his pocket. Pine honey? I unscrewed the lid and the smell filled my nostrils, making my mouth water. Oh, thank you, Dar. Nothing but the best for your first day back at school. I shrugged. It's only school. Oh, well, I suppose I'll just have to eat all of this myself then. He took the open jar and minded pouring the honey into his mouth. No! I grabbed it back. You're right, it's a very important day. I'm only surprised you didn't get 2 jars. The honey was so good I hardly noticed the porridge was burnt. But when I looked up, Dar's food was untouched. He was sitting in that hunched way that meant he was thinking. His hand rested on the milk jug, and I could see the pulse in his wrist. His eyes had a far-away look. First days of school were hard for both of us. I cleared away my bowl as quietly as possible and pushed his closer to his hand. I'll see you later, Dar. When he didn't answer, I picked up my satchel and left the house, closing the peeling green door gently behind me. Now, little does Isabella know that she's never again going to have just an ordinary day of going to school. And I know that some of you might be worried about what's going on, but honestly, the grown-ups have got it. All you've got to do is pick up books, read, draw, talk to your friends and family on the phone, and everything is going to be absolutely all right, just like stories always tell us.